That's how you do it. Hello, my friend, and welcome to Paradise, the good news with Tabitha Christopher, where everything is always cool and airy. So chill out. I'm your host, Tabitha Christopher. Word of the day is coming from Matthew chapter 5, verses 14 through 16. It reads, "You are the light of the world, a city set on a hill that cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a bushel. No, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to all the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven." Let's jump right in, Dr. Phil. Give us a snapshot of your ministry.
Well, I've been doing ministry for a long time, Tabby. I started in the late 70s, around 1979, and I have been teaching the word from one end of the planet to the next. And God has used me in that way to send me across borders, and I traveled to many countries and mostly have done leadership training, gathering pastors and leaders and training them in the fundamental doctrines of the faith. I think that is something that is really missing in the body of Christ today. The foundations of what we're to believe. And so I have been traveling and doing that. And then in the early 90s, God instructed me to start a Bible college.
Right.
And so I started the International School of Faith in Sarasota, Florida. And for 10 years, I thought I had died and gone to heaven. It was my place to minister and my place, and I trained many leaders. And then God spoke to me and said, "I want you to turn this over." And I thought my world was coming to an end.
Was that when he led you to Southern California?
That's it. That's exactly it.
Okay, so can you tell us, how did you find New Creation Life Ministry?
Well, I came to Southern California and I began to teach in a Bible college, a local Bible college here. And then God began to speak to me about the message of the new creation. And that's when I founded New Creation Life International. You know, this whole thing is about that new creation life that we have in Christ. And I started New Creation Life International, and God told me, here's where I want you to start New Creation Life University and begin to plant those schools around the world and locally here in Southern California. And so for the last 4 or 5 years here in Southern California, I think it's been about 4 years, I have been establishing New Creation Life International and getting ready to launch New Creation Life University. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, it should be, because I mean, I've been under his teaching for a bit, and it changed my life. It truly did change my life. So it's such an honor to have you here to talk to others about the very things that you've been teaching, the truth of the gospel. Which is a great segue into the topic of the show, discipleship.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, discipleship is the most important thing we can do with believers. You know, Jesus said, go into all the world and make disciples of all nations, teaching them. See that? Teaching them to observe what I've spoken to them. So it's a very specific teaching. It's the teaching of Jesus. And you know, Paul in Romans chapter 1 made an important point. He said, I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. See that? He called it the gospel of Christ.
Yeah.
He said, for it, the gospel of Christ, is the power of God unto salvation. See, one thing we have to learn as believers, if we want power, we have to have the right message. That's an important thing.
Right.
See, I've sat in churches and I've been around ministries that are teaching the wrong things, and there's no life. There's no deliverance. There's nobody's being raised from the dead. Nobody's being set free from drugs. Their lives are being transformed. It's the gospel that transforms people, and more specifically, the gospel of Christ.
Yeah.
See? So now we have to understand what that gospel is. What is it? Well, Paul goes on to say there in Romans 1, it's interesting what he said. He said, for in it, in the gospel of Christ, the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith. See, this is a new kind of righteousness. It's a gospel that preaches a different kind of righteousness. And you know, Jesus made this thing. If we're going to talk about discipleship, why don't we go to the master? Jesus said, make disciples, teaching them. And so let's look at Jesus. What did he actually teach us? What did he tell us about discipleship? He made a statement in Matthew And it's a very interesting one because he's talking and contrasting two messages. Jesus said, all you who are heavy laden and burdened,
Yes.
come unto me. Now you see, he's beckoning people to him. He's saying, take my yoke upon you and learn of me. See, it's a learning yoke.
Right.
And when we think of discipleship is a yoke. It's an adherence to a certain way of thinking. You see, in Jesus' time, when a Pharisee called or a rabbi called someone to their teaching, they would say, take my yoke. Take my way of thinking.
Right.
Well, what kind of thinking was Jesus talking about? Right? What did he say? He said, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. He said, all you who are heavy laden and burdened. What was he talking about? He was contrasting the law and the message of the gospel of Christ.
So it goes with your thinking.
It does.
Change your thinking.
You have to change your thinking. You have to reformulate. If you're going to be a disciple, you have to be a disciple of a certain way of thinking.
Incredible.
This is important. See, believers must understand, and we have to challenge believers. What is the form of thinking that you have?
Right.
What framework do you think in?
I know, hey, guys, he can go on. And you're going to, it just continues to just give life to you because it's the truth. It's the gospel.
That's it.
Which is Jesus Christ, who came to give us life. You got to tell us where you're going next with this, with the truth, the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Well, like I said, this message of the gospel of Christ, which has the power of God to transform, that's what we see.
Yeah.
When we preach it, we see lives being transformed. We have formed New Creation Life University.
Yes.
And in just recently, I have got an invitation to go to Sierra Leone.
Wow.
Which is amazing. A bishop who's overseeing over 400 pastors, 400 churches there within Sierra Leone and Liberia, has invited us to come and address those pastors and to do a crusade. They have about 6,000 ready to go in the crusade.
Wow.
And they have also given us an invitation with the president of Sierra Leone and the minister of education, and we are talking about, we're doing an exploratory mission to decide whether we want to plant a Bible college there.
Oh,
so I'm very excited about that.
Yeah.
Very
When are you guys going to go? When are you going?
We're going in December, in the first week of December. And you can believe with us, we're believing for everything that we're going to need to do that trip. We're taking a small team with us, and we're believing for souls to be won to the Lord, for manifestations of God and healings in the crusades, and then that God would knit our hearts together with the pastors, and we'll get a group core of leaders in that part of the world. We believe God is giving us that nation.
Yeah. Pastor,
and obviously it takes some leaders to do that.
Yes. Okay, Dr. Phil, we gotta go. Oh, I wish we had more time, but before we go, can you speak a message into those that are watching?
I can.
That need to hear about what they're to do next if they want to be discipled.
Listen, let me tell you, Jesus has asked believers to become disciples. There's a difference between converts and disciples. Converts accept what Jesus did and get transformed and become born again. But disciples believe and act in a certain way based on a teaching and an understanding of what has been taught to them. See? So I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you believers out there. What is it that you believe? You know, the Apostle the Apostle Peter had an encounter with two people, Ananias and Sapphira. Remember them? Remember them? And this is an interesting little truth. Ananias means grace. And Sapphira is the word from the Greek that comes from a stone of fire. You know that the law was written on a stone on a fiery mountain. You remember that? And let me ask you a question. If you take a little Sapphira and you mix it with a little bit of Ananias, what will you get? a little bit of the law and a little bit of grace, you'll get death. You see, you have to figure out what you believe and how you believe it. And it's interesting that Apostle Paul, when he met Jesus on the road to Damascus, the Lord sent him to a man named Ananias, no Sapphira, and the most religious man of his day, fighting against God's church. Ananias laid hands on him, and scales fell off his eyes, and he became the greatest champion of grace. Let me ask you folks that are out there listening today, what is it that you have discipled your life around? Is it a legalistic effort to prove yourself to God and to find some kind of spirituality based on your behavior? Or is it something you believe that Jesus has done on your behalf? Come into new creation life. Come into an understanding of what Jesus has done for you. Embrace it and believe it and enter into the finished work. Listen, I know that God has something powerful for your life. He'll transform you and change you. And just remember, when you became a sinner, you didn't do that by anything of your effort. You got that through Adam. Adam passed that along to you, and there's nothing you can do to change it. All you can do is believe in the finished work of Christ, and when you embrace that, it'll transform your life, I promise. That's the message that works, Debbie.
And that's where we're going to end today's video. Dr. Philip, thank you so much for being here and sharing that powerful truth with myself and with all of our friends watching.
Well, thanks for having me.
Can you tell them where they can find you?
If you want to learn more about the message of New Creation Life, you can contact us at newcreationlifeinternational@gmail.com. We have a lot of great teaching that'll bless your life, and I promise you, the gospel is the power of God unto salvation. You'll be changed and you'll be blessed. Please find us.
Your life will never be the same. Mine has not been. It's been amazing as I have discovered who I am in Jesus Christ and what He's come to do for me. And He came to do the same for you too. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Most
it's been a blessing.
definitely. Yes. All right, you guys, you know what to do. Like, share, subscribe, all of that. Check the descriptions below for what's coming next. You don't want to miss it right here on The Good News with Tabitha Christopher. Be awesome as God created you to be.